Few monarchs in history have captured the imagination quite as forcefully and horrifyingly as Henry VIII of England. It is told in a sequence of 6 doomed marriages to Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. Each one ended either in tragedy or in scandal. What the popular version does not recount is the darker truths Henry tried to erase: political manipulation, cruelty under the guise of God's will, and the quiet suffering of the women who shared his table, his bed, and his fearsome temper. One of the first secrets buried beneath Tudor propaganda is just how political Henry's first marriage actually was. It was more than a question of love or diplomacy. Rather, it was one of legitimacy, a guarantee that aligned England with Spain through the marriage of the brother's widow. As Catherine failed to give him a surviving son, he started to say that God punished him for marrying her unlawfully. What he did not say was the hypocrisy. Henry himself begged the Pope for special permission to marry her in the first place. Now, when things went wrong, Henry twisted that very same argument into divine condemnation to justify his annulment. The second secret was in his heir fixation. Indeed, Henry's paranoid fear of dying without a son did consume him. Modern historians say that he fully fits the pattern of an insecure ruler who is terrified of being forgotten. The frantic pursuit of a male heir had nothing to do with lineage, but rather with control, legacy, and ego. He could not bear the thought that his throne might pass to a woman, despite being surrounded by intelligent, capable queens. The third secret is one Henry worked especially hard to erase: the immense popularity of Catherine of Aragon. The English, even as he cast her aside and confined her to distant residences, regarded her as the only true queen. The manner in which she kept her dignity in the face of her humiliation made Henry seem petty and cruel. The letters from foreign ambassadors make it clear he was so afraid of her influence that he tried to cut her off completely from the world, controlling who could see her, right down to intercepting her mail. Yet even while dying alone, Catherine never renounced him. Her final letter addressed him as "my most dear lord and husband." That devotion haunted Henry for the rest of his life. Anne Boleyn leads us to the fourth and fifth secrets: his premeditated smear campaign against her, and possibly his medical decline. The charges of adultery and incest that led to her execution in 1536 were almost without doubt trumped up. The evidence in court was weak, often contradictory, and politically expedient. Henry's ministers were ready and willing to please the volatile king, thereby building a case sure to eliminate Anne quickly and efficiently. What Henry tried to conceal was his fear that Anne might turn against him or fail to produce a son. In destroying her, he not only shed a wife, but rewrote the narrative in such a way that for centuries she was seen as a schemer, not a victim. The fifth secret is Henry's failing health and a possible brain injury since the jousting accident of 1536, in the same year Anne died. He was knocked out for hours and radically different in personality. Reports detail his sudden rages, paranoia, and erratic decision-making. He went from being an athletic king to becoming an obese, immobile king suffering from ulcers, possibly diabetes. He hid these infirmities behind layers of ceremony and intimidation, but they shaped his later marriages in devastating ways. His sixth secret is Jane Seymour, who is always remembered as his true love. It was much more practical in reality. Jane was chosen because she was everything Anne was not: submissive, quiet, obedient, gave him his long-awaited son Edward, and died shortly afterward. Henry enshrined her memory because she served his myth perfectly: the gentle wife who gave him an heir and never defied him. The others were to be made to look unworthy by her idealized picture in death. The seventh and eighth secrets refer to his fourth marriage to Anne of Cleves. Henry said he found her repulsive, calling her the Flanders mare. Still, it is for political reasons, not personal, that he annulled the marriage. The alliance with her brother, a powerful German duke, had lost its strategic value. Anne's dignity and cooperation after the annulment embarrassed Henry. She accepted her fate with graciousness and remained in England as his beloved sister. Many courtiers later said she was the happiest of all his wives, which Henry preferred to ignore. But perhaps most chilling of them all is the ninth secret, how he treated Catherine Howard, barely a teenager when she had caught his eye. He himself was in his late 40s and prey to disease and insecurity. The youth of Catherine revived his vanity. So, when some imprecise allegations of her past relationships surfaced, he reacted with furious betrayal. The so-called evidence of her infidelity was imprecise, but he used it as an excuse for her execution at the age of 19. What he wanted hidden away was that he had married her sans due investigation, and that his wrath came as much out of humiliation as law. The execution itself was the 10th secret. According to various contemporary accounts, Catherine asked to have the block brought to her the night before, so that she could practice laying her head upon it. Henry made sure she died quickly and in private. Still, rumors of her poise got out. That image, a terrified but poised girl facing death, collided violently with his official narrative of treason and moral corruption. His sixth wife, Catherine Parr, exposed the 11th and 12th secrets. She almost became another victim. An educated and reform-minded woman, she wrote devotional works reflecting Protestant sympathies. Conservative factions at court accused her of heresy and had a warrant signed for her arrest. She saved herself only by pleading with Henry and claiming she had discussed religion simply in order to comfort him. Henry later denied he ever intended her any harm, but his own counsel had prepared her imprisonment. He wanted posterity to remember him as a wise patriarch, not a tyrant who almost executed his final wife. The 13th secret was the extent of female intelligence and resistance in his court. Every one of his queens walked a tightrope between intrigue and terror. They learned to speak reservedly, to smile when they were terrified, to have the basic manners of subjects and partners for a man who could destroy them with one word. Official histories of the time make them out to be meek. Letters, poems, and ambassadorial reports prove they were anything but. Catherine of Aragon defied his orders. Anne Boleyn influenced policy through her charm and wit, while Catherine Parr subtly promoted women's education. These quiet rebellions are precisely what Henry's chroniclers tried to erase. The 14th secret. Henry's loneliness. Despite the 6 wives and the enormous power, he finished his life in a tormented solitude. People who knew him during his last years described a man pursued by specters of his daughters, of his lost friends, of the women whose lives he had destroyed. His last will made careful provisions for Jane Seymour's memory, but none for the others. It was as if he had convinced himself that by erasing them, he could erase his guilt. And the 15th and last secret is how even history became his accomplice. The Tudor propaganda machine plays, portraits, chronicles, cemented his image as a godlike ruler, decisive and divinely ordained. The darker truths of his reign were interred deep beneath an almost flawlessly presented veneer of authority. And yet, over time, there have been cracks. Surviving letters from his wives, testimony of witnesses to him, and court records reveal a very human being, flawed, driven by insecurity, pride, and the fear of death. Henry VIII's is not a story of power or of marriage, but of the lengths to which one man went to try to control, not just his kingdom, but also the very narrative of his life. And in trying to bury his secrets, he made them immortal.